I'd like to welcome you all to the Life Monthly Webinar Series. As you know, this morning's webinar presentation is being hosted by Bruce Newman and Ken Serini, who are both affiliates of the Social Enterprise Institute, Long Island chapter, and who will share with us information on the social enterprise movement and social entrepreneurism. But before I turn the floor over to our presenters, let me introduce the Low Income Forum on Energy to those of you who may be joining us for the first time. The Low Income Forum on Energy is a unique statewide dialogue that brings together organizations and individuals committed to addressing the challenges and opportunities facing low-income New Yorkers as they seek safe, affordable, and reliable energy. Sponsored by the New York State Public Service Commission and underwritten by the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, the LIFE Dialogue encourages an interactive exchange of information and collaboration among the programs and resources that assist low-income energy consumers. Among the initiatives LIFE supports is this monthly webinar program that we're participating in today. The next webinar in the series will be held on Thursday, February 27th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, when representatives from the Empire Justice Center will be presenting their recent report titled, "Don't Lean on Me: How New York's Public Assistance Mortgages Undermine Homeownership and Financial Stability." Announcements about future webinars will be communicated to you via the web and email. In addition to the monthly webinar series, LIFE distributes a monthly electronic newsletter that provides information and resources relevant to those interested in low-income energy issues in New York State and beyond. The January newsletter is scheduled for distribution later this week. In cooperation with our webinars and newsletter, LIFE has expanded the low-income energy dialogue to include our organization's engagement with various aspects of online social media. We're working to provide up-to-date, real-time forums in which low-income energy stakeholders can communicate with each other and with outside networks in order to share information and connections. You can find LIFE on the LinkedIn Professional Network by logging on to LinkedIn and entering the Groups environment. Perform a search for Low Income Forum on Energy. Also, you can follow LIFE on Twitter by adding @LifeNYS to your Twitter network list. Look for information on how to join our social networking efforts in our announcements and newsletters. For more information on the Low Income Forum on Energy and our initiatives, or to be included in the LIFE electronic mailing list, there are a variety of ways to connect with us. General information about LIFE can be found on our website at lifenynews.org. If you'd like to be included on our electronic mailing list, you can find a very quick web-based form at lifenys.org/signup. We're interested in hearing from you about how we can best serve low-income energy communities. To that end, we've created an easy-to-use share tool. Sign on to the share tool at lifenys.org/share and give us your suggestions for newsletter articles or webinar topics. Additionally, you can give us announcement information about your organization's upcoming events or initiatives, and we will share that information with the LIFE community. The share tool also provides an opportunity to communicate best practices and resources for serving low-income communities. Finally, you can contact LIFE via our phone line at 1-877-NY-SMART using option 5, or contact us via email at lifenys@gmail.com. Now we should take care of a few housekeeping rules pertaining to this morning's webinar. You'll notice that the host name provided in the upper right corner of your screen is listed as Glenn Katz. Glenn is NYSERDA's IT Operations Support Manager, and until further licensing agreements are secured, his name will appear on your screen. But know that I will be the recipient of any communications sent through the webinar system today. If you have a question at any point during this morning's webinar, or immediately following the webinar, or if you need to contact me, the actual host, for any reason, you can use the instant message chat function to communicate with me. In the lower right portion of your screen, you'll see a text message option area labeled Chat. In order to communicate your question, first, check to be sure that the Send To drop-down list has Host selected. Then, type your question into the chat field located just below the Send to Host indicator, and finally, click Send and I'll receive your message. In the case that there are any technical difficulties or you accidentally get logged out of the webinar environment, know that we're recording this morning's webinar and the recording will be available on the LIFE webpage at lifenynews.org. With those formalities out of the way, let me introduce today's webinar presenters. Bruce Newman is a serial entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience in developing and financing a variety of technology, media, product and service companies, where he was responsible for revenue creation, client-supplier partnerships, product development, product business acquisitions, internal systems, and capital funding to build and run successful operations. Mr. Newman is an experienced chief executive that has structured nearly $50 million in venture capital financings for private and public early-stage companies where he was a member of the founding management team. He's an organizational expert who understands the startup, expansion, and exit phases of a business. Bruce is president of the Brookhaven Business Advisory Council and serves on the board of directors of the Social Enterprise Alliance of Long Island. He also serves as a non-executive advisor to several technology and product companies. In addition, he's co-author of a book on software for the commercial design industry and is an inventor of record on 2 U.S. patents in the area of electronic distribution. Ken Serini is the managing partner of Serini & Associates. He has more than 25 years of extensive audit experience in a variety of industries. In addition to his extensive audit experience, he has been directly involved in providing audit and consulting services for nonprofits, healthcare organizations, special education providers, and school districts. Mr. Serini has been quoted in publications such as Newsday, Long Island Business News, the Long Island Press, and the New York Times. In addition, for nearly 10 years, he wrote a weekly article spotlighting various Long Island nonprofit organizations for Long Island Business News. Ken is the editor for 3 of the 5 newsletters published in-house by Serini & Associates, including the Lesson Plan, written for school districts, the Special Edition, published for special education providers, and the NFP Advisor, written specifically for the nonprofit sector. Ken and Bruce will be discussing the social enterprise movement and social entrepreneurism, a hybrid economic model that unites for-profit and nonprofit organizations to create mutual self-sustaining value and measurable social impact. So now I'll turn the floor over to our presenters and they can continue with the presentation at their own pace.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. This is Ken Serini. I have Bruce Newman here with me, as Michelle mentioned. What we're going to do is we're going to talk today a little bit about social enterprise and what that means. And as Michelle mentioned, we are both on the board of the Social Enterprise Alliance, the Long Island chapter. So let's kind of just dive right into this. If people have questions as we're going along, please just post the questions and we'll try to get to them either through the presentation or at the end of the presentation. So if you ask 20 different people about what social enterprise is, you'll probably get 20 different answers. So while this is not a definitive answer or definitive definition, it's probably more our definition of what social enterprise is. So when you think of social enterprise, it's really trying to bring the business and the nonprofit sectors together. It's kind of the blurring of the lines between the 2 sectors, the for-profit and nonprofit sectors. So it's getting the for-profit sector to think more socially minded, kind of moving away from just that pure profit motive and thinking in terms of a triple bottom line, which looks at profit, people, and planet. So it's really looking at the social and environmental impact of what that business does, as well as the need to generate profitability. And when you think of the nonprofit sector, nonprofits have really kind of cornered the market on the social aspects of things, and they do that really well. But it's trying to get the nonprofit sector to infuse more business concepts into the way they do business, and that means whether it's developing a self-sustaining business model or increasing revenues through business enterprises, or whether that's effective partnering and collaborating with the for-profit sector, or really just introducing some basic business concepts into the organization. That's really what it's all about. And a lot of times, we talk to nonprofit organizations and we hear nonprofit organizations say, we're different, we're businesses. They are businesses. Nonprofits and for-profits are both businesses. They just have different stakeholders. So, if you can get both sides to really understand how the other side thinks and how the other side works, you're actually in a better position and you can actually generate better partnering between the two sectors. So Inc. magazine back in May 2011, so we're talking close to 3 years ago, had something published where it said, it used to be that if you wanted to make a difference, you joined a nonprofit, and if you wanted to make money, you launched a business. Today we're in an environment where there really is no real difference between the nonprofit and for-profit sectors in terms of, the two sectors coming closer together. When we look at, what social enterprise is all about, social enterprise is really looking to emphasize solving social issues using business opportunities. And that's really the direction that the sector is moving in, trying to find ways to solve some of the major social issues. And when you think of the major social issues, you think about things like healthcare, you think about energy, you think about housing, you think about childcare, education, transportation, and the list goes on. Many of these things are big business. They're big dollars involved in these. So, when you look at the level of revenue that could be generated off these for the business community, if they can just understand and come up with some of those problem solving for the social issues that are out there, and you look at the nonprofit sector that really wants to find ways to create real difference and solve some of the demand issues that are out there in a lot of these social issues. Again, bringing the two sectors together and blurring the line between the two sectors is really going to create a much more effective model on a go-forward basis. So really, what's driving this whole change? What's driving the movement towards social enterprise? There were several things. I mean, if you look at where the nonprofit sector is today, you're dealing with the downturn in the economy that occurred, where there's a greater demand for services. You've got the working poor. You've got many of these individuals who have never tapped into systems before. So you're dealing with a certain level of poverty and underemployment. Organizations have been competing for government dollars, and the government has kind of taken a step backwards out of the support of nonprofit organizations, so they're giving less money to the nonprofit sector because they're finding ways to try to balance their budgets also. So you're in a situation where every time the government takes a step back, the nonprofit sector has to take a step forward to kind of fill in that gap that the government has created. And since there's less money coming in from the government and more demand for services, there's been a greater level of competition within the nonprofit sector for private dollars. So nonprofit organizations that have relied solely upon government funding in the past have now started to look towards more traditional lines of funding, such as charitable contributions. How many dinners can one person attend? How many golf outings can they go to? But every single organization now has kind of jumped out there and is looking for ways to bring in additional money. So it's created greater competition for those dollars. There's a need for additional funding and resources within the nonprofit sector, which has created a kind of a new breed of donor, where donors are much more sophisticated. You've got much more information being presented online, where donors can do a tremendous level of research about organizations, and they can really find which organizations are really making a tremendous social impact. And I think you're finding more and more donors are focused on return on investment. They want to know that if they're going to make a donation, and it's not return on investment in the traditional way of looking at it, where they're making an investment in the business where they expect to get that money back, but it's really return on donated investment. So if they're going to be donating money to an organization, they want to know that there's leverage associated with that donation, and they want to know that they're going to see real impact and results in an area that's of interest to them. So nonprofits need to be more innovative in their approach on how they approach the marketplace. Again, we're in a global community, and there seem to be more and more global issues that are occurring with weather patterns and tornadoes and tsunamis and all these different things, which is kind of pulling dollars towards some of these areas across the country and pulling dollars away from some of the local charities. So the nonprofit sector needs to kind of create a new model, kind of one that's built on, as I mentioned before, collaboration between the nonprofit and for-profit sectors. The nonprofits can't just reach their hand out anymore and say, I need a donation, I need you to give me money, and what you'll get in exchange is the fact that you'll feel good about it. It really needs to be more of a partnership now in terms of the approach. So what's happening in terms of corporations? There's a significant shift in information flow through social media, more peer-to-peer information sharing. Think about where people get information today. It used to be where newspapers and the news were the biggest source of information. I think you're getting more and more peer-to-peer information sharing. People go more and more online and look towards things like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and they're using these avenues to generate information. So, you know, if you've got someone with a tremendous level of followers, and there are different online services or online places where they really wield a lot of consumer sentiment, you can really shift the way of thinking, or one person through an online blast can shift the way of thinking of many consumers. In terms of the nonprofit sector and in terms of corporations, corporations also want to have that ability to be able to shift consumer sentiment. So, you know, they need to find ways to build up their links, they need to build up their connections, and they need to create ways that their customers feel that they're connected to the community and they're doing good. I mean, the whole concept of the Gordon Gekko greed is good sentiment is kind of gone. All you have to do is look at Occupy Wall Street and some of the issues that happened there at Occupy Wall Street, and the fact that a small group of people were able to mobilize and create a significant impact on the for-profit sector. So image and reputation are going to be very, very important to the corporate world. Consumers want good products, but they want them from good companies. So you really need to find ways for the for-profit sector to kind of connect to their consumers and, you know, and be good corporate citizens. And as that last comment says, research points to strong links between workplace volunteer activities and employee engagement. More and more organizations are trying to get their staff involved in charitable endeavors and volunteering as a way of team building. And we've kind of coined a term over here called volunteaming in terms of trying to get some of our, we do it with our staff, and I know a lot of the nonprofits are trying to get more and more corporations involved. So what's changing in the nonprofit sector? As I mentioned before, donors are no longer content with psychic benefit. You know, the social good is not good enough anymore. Donors are interested in social change. So there's that change from, you know, doing social good or helping one organization because the organization needs money to really trying to make a difference in the community where the organization or where the business or the individual lives. So really, in order to be able to do that, organizations need to change the way that they gather information. They need to be able to more accurately measure outcomes, and they need to make that information much more available online to anybody who happens to be looking, because they really need to get the message across in terms of what they're doing from an impact perspective. Because as I mentioned before, there is a shift from values donation to return on investment value philanthropy. So donors really want to know where their money is going to be used. They want to know the impact that their money is going to have. So here on Long Island, there's an organization called Island Harvest. Island Harvest brings in about $2 million worth of cash a year to the organization. But the organization, with that $2 million worth of cash, is able to rescue, they're a food rescue service, they're able to rescue about $14 million worth of food and distribute that to the hungry. So a $2 million cash flow that's going through the organization is having an overall $14, $15 million impact on the community. That's what donors want to see. They want to see that leverage. They want to know that if they're giving money to an organization, That money is not just going to be a one-for-one impact, it's going to be multiple impact, and they want to know that that money is going to create something that's self-sustaining. So, that's what they're looking for, and we'll talk about that self-sustainability part in a few minutes. As I mentioned also, corporate partners recognize that nonprofits can help drive business growth and employee retention. It's moving more and more, when you're working with corporations, moving more and more away from, I'm just going to give you a donation, and it's moving more towards how can we partner more effectively, how is this a two-way relationship, what are we as the corporation going to be getting out of this? So they're looking for beneficial relationships. Nonprofits need to identify how they can make a difference for that corporation and sell the value associated with that partnering. So they need to identify and sell value as part of what they're doing, which is something that's new to the nonprofit sector and something the sector hasn't necessarily needed to do before. Again, there's been a shift now from fundraising to impact. Just doing social good is not enough. You need to do social good, and there needs to be a value associated with that relationship. So the CEO of Meticulon, which is a Canadian-based nonprofit that utilizes individuals on the autistic spectrum to provide technology solutions, Garth Johnson, said, although many of our customers come to us with the motive of doing some social good, they will retain our services because of the excellent work product we provide. So again, doing social good works the first time, but if you do social good and you provide an inferior product, or you're not at the right price points, then you're going to be in a situation where you'll get that one opportunity, but you may not get repeat business. So again, it's about creating something as a nonprofit organization that is going to be a benefit to the corporations that you're working with because of that social good component of it, but it's also there needs to be value. To kind of give an example of this, you've got a nonprofit organization called Grayston Bakery. Grayston Bakery is over in, I think it's Brooklyn, and what Grayston Bakery does is they utilize individuals that are part of the consumers that they serve to create different bakery products. One of the bakery products they produce is they produce brownies, and they've entered into an agreement with Ben & Jerry's to provide all of the brownies for Ben & Jerry's Fudge Brownie ice cream. So all of the brownies that are in the Ben & Jerry's Fudge Brownie ice cream come from Grayston Bakery, which is affiliated with a nonprofit organization. And the money that's generated by Grayston Bakery goes back to the nonprofit organization to fund the social mission of the organization. Now, if the Ben & Jerry's has a reputation of working and being socially minded, so it's in their DNA, in essence, to work with a nonprofit organization. But if their brownies weren't good brownies, and if the pricing wasn't appropriate pricing where Ben & Jerry's would be able to meet their price points when they're selling to their customers, then they wouldn't be buying from Grayston Bakery. So it's a combination of, doing that social good, and if the pricing is close and the product is good, you've got the pluses there. As I mentioned, organizations or corporations and individuals are looking for return on investment, and they want to know that if they're going to be making a donation to an organization, that they're going to get that return on investment. So Clear Channel Clear Channel is owns various radio stations. They entered into a partnership with Big Brothers Big Sisters of New York City to provide 2,700 PSAs, and they did it to benefit Big Brothers Big Sisters, but they also did it because they saw a positive with being affiliated with Big Brothers Big Sisters. So again, corporations are willing to pay for image. They're looking to affiliate with positive, well-known, highly publicized organizations. So the nonprofit sector needs to continue to, again, build its image, build its networks, and it needs to create whether it be real value or perceived value in the name of the organization and the products that the organization and the service that the organization delivers. The more that the corporate environment sees or feels that there's perceived value to being affiliated with that nonprofit organization, the more that the corporate sector is going to get in line to work with that, the nonprofit. So let's talk about certain ways that nonprofits and for-profits can work together. So we're going to give you some examples here of ways that the two sectors can work together. Now, these are just some models. There are many derivations to how these models work. In terms of the names, endorsement, co-business, those are not per se real names. Those are names that we gave to it in terms of just being able to give examples of different ways that things could work. So let's talk about some of these. The first one we have down here is the endorsement or royalty model. And under the endorsement or royalty model, you've got a nonprofit organization that gets revenue for its name or its logo or a trademark. One of the biggest examples of this, or clearest examples of this, is the American Heart Association. Between 2004 and 2007, the American Heart Association raised over $30 million from pharmaceutical companies for use of its name. And they earned $1 million more for that little check mark that they have, that heart healthy check mark that goes on various foods. So again, you know, people look at the American Heart Association, they look at an endorsement from the American Heart Association as something that has real value. And if, you know, a business or a product has that check mark and has that perceived value of it being a heart healthy food, more people will buy it. So there's a real benefit to the nonprofit in that the nonprofit is getting money. And there's a real benefit for the for-profit because, you know, they're getting that affiliation with the American Heart Association and that check mark. Again, nonprofits have to be careful about who they partner with. They have to vet out the situation and make sure that the partner is going to be an effective partner. There has to be formal agreements that talk about what can and can't be used. But if you pick the right partners as a nonprofit organization, and you enter into the right agreements, it could be very, very beneficial to the nonprofit sector, and it could also be beneficial to the for-profit partner. And just so that people don't think, oh, you have to be this very, very large organization like the American Heart Association, here on Long Island, there's a much smaller organization called America's Vet Dogs. And America's Vet Dogs is an organization that provides kind of like guide dogs for veterans. And because both veterans and animals are very, very big out there in the marketplace, they've been approached by several companies. One is a dog food company, and the other is a pet toy supply company to, again, provide their name, you know, approved by America's Vet Dogs to their products, and they've been getting royalties from this. And again, they're a relatively small organization, not as well known as American Heart Association. But again, you know, if you've got that perceived value, that's something that you can sell. Co-businesses, that's where nonprofits and for-profit organizations enter into a co-business for mutual benefit. A good example of this here on Long Island is an organization called Big Brothers Big Sisters. Big Brothers Big Sisters of Long Island processes about 11 million pounds of clothing a year. So what they do is they go out and they ask people for donations of clothing. They collect the donations, and they've entered into a co-business venture with an organization, a for-profit business called Savers. Savers has stores across the country where they sell, thrift stores across the country where they sell the products that Big Brothers and Big Sisters are able to collect. So Big Brothers Big Sisters has the collection system to bring the clothing in, and Savers has the distribution network to be able to market and distribute those products to the ultimate consumer. So again, a win-win. Big Brothers Big Sisters gets paid for the clothing that they bring in, and Savers makes money off the relationship because they're able to take that clothing and sell it in the marketplace and make a profit. The other thing that Big Brothers and Big Sisters has done, kind of leveraging off the relationship that they have with Savers, is they've reached out to other nonprofit organizations and said to other nonprofit organizations, look, if you can go out there and bring in clothing from your donors also, we will give you a piece of the action on the relationship that we have with Savers. So they've been able to leverage their relationship with Savers to even bring in higher levels of clothing from other nonprofit organizations that they've shared the relationship with. Another example would be use of resources or expertise. So there's an organization called the Lymphatic Education and Research Network, which has created a tissue bank. What the Lymphatic Education and Research Network does is they do research on the lymphatic system and lymphatic diseases and lymphedema and all of those other things, which affect millions of people a year across the nation. So they've been able to collect tissue samples so that when drug companies are going out there and trying to develop product to what are typically known as orphan drugs for smaller diseases, they've been able to come now to the Lymphatic Education and Research Network and really cut down the amount of time and energy it takes for them to get the samples they need to be able to do drug testing. So they've been able to, or they purchase the samples from the Lymphatic Education and Research Network. And the Lymphatic Education Research Network has kind of taken that resource or that expertise that they have, and they've created a business model out of it to create revenue. Another example of it would be a software company, where a software company needs to beta test its product. And if it's going out into the marketplace to beta test its product, it could cost millions of dollars to beta test the product. But if I go to, let's say, a university, or if I go to a large nonprofit organization that has a tremendous level of reach, I can get that beta tested for much less, because now I've got a concentrated population that I'm working through, and some of that legwork is not being done by the computer company or software company, but it's being done by the nonprofit organization. So again, it's a win-win where the nonprofit can either get much needed technology or dollars to do the beta testing, and the organization or the for-profit is able to generate or get that beta testing done for much less than it would be able to do it on the open market. A couple other examples. You have a mission-driven business. These are very common in the nonprofit sector, especially when we've had this downturn in the economy, where you've got more and more people were unemployed. It became much more difficult for some of the nonprofit organizations that worked with specific populations, such as the developmentally disabled, to find jobs for their consumers. So if you're in a situation where you're having a tough time finding jobs for your consumers, what do? Well, you create jobs for your consumers. And how do you create jobs is by starting up a business. As I mentioned before, that's something Greyston Bakery had done. They looked at the fact that they needed to try to find ways to employ the consumers that they work with, and by setting up that bakery, they were able to find jobs for the consumers they work with. Other organizations that have done it, I mean, there's a couple examples I gave you here. You have IGHL, which is Independent Group Home Living, which is an organization out east on the island, and they developed a store called the Flower Barn, which is a nursery that sells retail to customers, and they also opened up a bed and breakfast, and both of them employ individuals with developmental disabilities, and the businesses generate profitability, and that profitability that's generated by the businesses go back into the organization to help support the social mission of the organization. Another organization that's done this in a very interesting way is the Viscardi Center, again here on Long Island. It's a school here for the developmentally disabled on Long Island. They actually went out and they opened up a UPS franchise. So they actually have a UPS franchise, because most of the time when you think about the nonprofit sector, you don't necessarily think about franchising or going out there and purchasing a franchise business, but that's something that you're starting to see more and more. As I said, nonprofits are looking at the business model to find ways to create self-sustaining revenue streams for the organization. Another model, or the last model that we're going to kind of go over today, is the pure business model. And that's where a nonprofit organization generates a business. A lot of times this is out of necessity or strength that the nonprofit has. So an example of that is FEGS, a very, very large nonprofit organization, realized that two biggest costs that they had within their business were their staffing costs and their technology costs. And if they were going to build appropriate infrastructure, they were going to need to invest a lot of money in both their technology and in their personnel area. So they started up really out of necessity, things that they needed internally for themselves. They started up two businesses. One called All Sector Technology, which is a computer consulting and IT consulting company that does software and IT networking. And the other is a company called HR Dynamics, which is an HR provider. Those two companies today generate $25 million a year in revenue, and that $25 million a year creates a tremendous level of profitability for FEGS. Right now, FEGS, I believe the statistic is that FEGS generates about 8% of, because again, they're a very, very large organization. They generate right now about 8% of their revenue from these business ventures. And they're working on additional business ventures, and they figure within the next decade, they're going to be generating about 40% of their revenue from business ventures, which is taking a lot of pressure off them and resolving a lot of issues with respect to government funding. And that's a big issue, especially with respect to, you have Governor Cuomo last year issuing Executive Order 38, which puts limitations on executive spending and limitations on administrative expenses. So by generating some of these businesses, they're generating the ability to cover some of those costs that wouldn't be covered under government funding. So that's important. So let's look a little bit about where social enterprise kind of fits in the whole model. So when you think of the for-profit sector, you think mostly of financial returns. You think about the for-profit sector really focused on profit. And one thing I want to stress, I mean, when we talk about social enterprise is not just nonprofit organizations. Social enterprise is for-profits and nonprofits. As I said before, it's for-profits kind of functioning more socially minded and being more socially responsible, and it's nonprofits kind of thinking more business-oriented and incorporating business concepts. So it's kind of blurring the line between the two. But a social enterprise could be a for-profit business and it could be a nonprofit business. Really, the ultimate goal of social enterprise is really finding ways to attack the major social issues that exist here throughout our country and throughout the world, and doing it in a way that is economically viable for everyone, so that we're not necessarily relying upon government funding to meet some of these social missions, but it's really looking for ways for to meet social goals and doing it in a self-sustained way. So really, social enterprise kind of falls in between, again, the financial returns, which is really focused on profit, and the social impact, which is really dealing more, as we mentioned before, people, trying to reach out to the community and consumers, and planet, which is being environmentally friendly. So social enterprise really focuses on people, planet, and profit, all three of them. So when we look at the continuum of the return expectation, in the you've got donations on one side, which is your social return on investment. Those are donations coming in from individuals and corporations and private foundations, and really that's the traditional way that charities have been funded in the past, other than government funding, but some of the extra dollars coming in have traditionally come from donations, where it's really focused on social impact. So it's kind of looking at the social return on investment. So if I'm going to be donating money, what's that social impact going to be? On the for-profit side, which is really, again, more of that financial return, the investment has really been more of a financial return on investment measured by percent return. So if I'm going to be investing in a business, it's a good investment if I get X return on my investment. When we look now at social enterprise, which kind of falls in between the two, it's really looking towards investors and saying, okay, you're still going to get a return on your investment, but that return on investment is going to be a hybrid return on investment. It's no longer going to be strictly a financial return on investment. It's going to be something that maybe produces a slightly lower rate of financial return, but it's also going to provide some level of social return. So that investment is going to actually have a dual purpose or a hybrid purpose of providing both financial and social return. And I think that's the direction that, I think everybody would like to see things moving in. And that's really the focus behind social enterprise and social entrepreneurism. So again, if we look at the, and this would be a kind of an example of how the thought process worked in the non-social enterprise landscape, and then we'll kind of talk about how it looks like now in the new social enterprise landscape. So in the non-social enterprise landscape, you had your traditional business, which engaged in commerce primarily to maximize returns for the owners. So again, I mean, the focus here was you have a business, and the purpose of the business is to generate profitability. If that traditional business was a socially responsible business, that socially responsible business still looked to maximize returns for the owners, but they tried not to be harmful to the outside world. So, you know, this kind of is an instance where maybe the business may be socially responsible, but the business is not really a social enterprise. A social enterprise is an organization that really has it built into its DNA that, you know, as part of its mission, the mission of the organization, yeah, it's to generate profitability for the shareholders, but a big part of the mission is also to do good and to make a difference. So, you know, I don't know if any of you have heard of Tom's Shoes. Tom's Shoes has a mission where for every pair of shoes they sell, okay, so that's the component where they're trying to make money. For every pair of shoes they sell, they donate a pair of shoes to a third world country. And they've now started to introduce new products where they're doing the same thing with. So built into their DNA, built into who they are as an organization, there's this whole process of not just being socially responsible, but making a social difference. So that's kind of the differentiation between, you know, a traditional non-social enterprise and a social enterprise, where again, one it's trying not to do harm, and the other is it's definitively trying to do good. And then your traditional nonprofit or non-governmental organization seeks to achieve common good, but without a business method of doing so. Again, you know, when we look at the whole concept of social entrepreneurism and how it affects the nonprofit sector, you know, the nonprofit sector now needs to run more like a business. The government funding is drying up, the demand for service is increasing, the competition for donations is at an all-time high. So organizations need to find new self-sustaining revenue streams, and they need to find ways to differentiate themselves from the other nonprofits in the marketplace. So just a little bit about some of the differing dynamics. The business, you know, the for-profit sector of businesses, they have capital, but they typically need demand. And the social sector typically needs capital and has demand. So the question is, how can the two sectors kind of work together? So how can the social sector or the nonprofit sector drive demand to businesses who have the capital, and how can businesses push capital over to the social sector? And that's what, you know, we're talking about when we talk about trying to find ways to effectively partner. It's how can the nonprofit sector and the for-profit sector come together with the different resources and needs that they have and find a way to collaborate to effectively work together. And, you know, again, that's what we're trying to drive here in terms of social entrepreneurs and social enterprise. So where does social enterprise fit? Social enterprise fits right in that little white spot in the middle of the three sectors. So you've got government, you've got business, and you've got nonprofit. And where the three sectors kind of come together and can collaborate effectively, that's where we want to be in terms of social enterprise. That's the heart of the model. And if we can be right there in the middle, in the heart of the model, it's going to really make profound change out there in the marketplace. So what makes a good social enterprise? So you need to understand the needs or the problems that exist out there in the marketplace, and you need to find and look for opportunity, and then find a way to create and deliver a viable solution in a profitable way. Again, a nonprofit organization is kind of a misnomer. Nonprofits are really tax-exempt organizations. They get a tax break to function and do social good. It doesn't mean that a nonprofit organization cannot generate profitability. Nonprofits should be generating profitability. They should be putting away money. They should be thinking in terms of, how can I leverage and how can I be more effective in terms of what I do. I mentioned FEGS before. There's another organization here on Long Island called FREE. And what FREE does is they provide a lot of back office function to nonprofits. So they provide accounting services, they provide controller services, they provide CFO services, IT services to other nonprofit organizations. Part of the reason they do it is because they feel that it's important for them to help some of the other nonprofit organizations. The other reason they do it is because they're actually using it as a way to get to know some of the other nonprofits so that they can develop strategic alliances, and ultimately they've taken over some of those organizations that they've provided back office functions for in a way of creating both horizontal and vertical growth for the organization. So again, when you're looking at business concepts, for-profit corporations take over businesses and they go through mergers and acquisitions all the time. There's no reason why that's not a viable model also for the nonprofit sector. So again, they saw a problem in the fact that there was a lot of back office functionality and there were services that were outside the reach of what they did. They went out and so they saw a problem, they saw an opportunity, and they found a solution which was able to help them to gain vertical and horizontal integration. So again, it's going out there and doing a needs assessment. What does the community need? And going out there and trying to understand the needs of the community. And then how are you as an organization, a nonprofit organization, poised to effectively fill that void? So first you do your needs assessment of what's out there in the community that, where the needs exist. Then you need to do a self-assessment to see if you have the skills and resources needed to fit that need. You want to look at your competition. So, all of this is kind of going back and kind of looking at that old, business planning model to see if, this will work. So who's your competition in the marketplace? What differentiates you from the marketplace? What are you different? What are you bringing to the market that's different from everybody else? And when you look at your competition is, other nonprofit organizations and it's for-profit businesses. What's the value proposition you bring to the table? You have your name, your reputation. But that'll only carry you so far. You also have to have a good product and be able to deliver it responsibly and everything else. And then you want to look at the end is, can it be self-sustaining? If you're not going to make money off it, then it doesn't make sense to do this. And the statistic is something like 70% of all businesses fail, 70 or 80% depending on the nature of the business you're getting into. So you still have to make sure that you've got proper capital to fund the business. You have to have buy-in at all levels within the organization, including the board of directors. Again, you want to make sure that, you're creating a model that's going to have real return on investment. Because if you don't have a return on investment, it's not going to be self-perpetuating. And think about this a second. So now if I go out there and I create a business model and I've gone through and I've done all of the financial modeling and planning, and I've gone and done a risk assessment, and I've gone and put together a strategic plan, and I show that this is a viable business entity, and now I go to a donor and I say to a donor, look, I need $250,000 worth of seed money to get this business off the ground. And if you help me with this $250,000 worth of seed money, that's a one-time investment on your part, and that one-time investment on your part is going to leverage to a self-perpetuating business that's going to generate ongoing revenue to our business, our nonprofit, on a go-forward basis. That's a tremendous message to send to a for-profit partner or to a foundation, in that they make a one-time donation, and that one-time donation is going to have a leveraged impact in terms of self-sustainability of the organization. So what's the right structure? There's many different ways or many different structures that an organization can kind of put in place. It could be part of the nonprofit sector, not a separate legal entity. The thing you have to be careful there is when you get into making it part of the nonprofit organization, you have to worry about things like unrelated business income. If you generate too much, not generate too much revenue, but if you have too much of your time devoted to unrelated business activities, an organization could lose its tax-exempt status, so you have to be very, very careful when you're kind of assessing what's going to happen. You can set up a wholly owned LLC. The beauty of a wholly owned LLC is that the operations function within the LLC, but the LLC does not in and of itself have to file its own separate tax return, and the operations of the LLC roll right up into the organization. So if it's a wholly owned LLC that's unrelated, it'll roll right up into the organization's 990T. You can set up a separate nonprofit organization if it happens to be a mission-driven business. You can set up a separate for-profit, like FEGS did with All Sector Technology. On the other new structures that have been created, there are two new structures. There's something called a B Corp and an LC3. A B Corp is kind of a social corporation. LC3 is a social LLC. These are more prevalent in the for-profit community. What makes these attractive to the for-profit community is right now the way the tax laws work is if I've got a corporation, the primary focus of a corporation is to generate profitability for the owners of the corporation. So if I happen to have a corporation that has multiple shareholders, a shareholder could bring suit against the management or primary owner of an organization if it doesn't try to maximize profitability. A B Corp is a corporation that has gone out there and has said, you know, part of our mission, part of what's built into our DNA is the fact that we're going to be socially responsible. And since we're going to be socially responsible, we don't expect our profitability to be as high as it would be, because that's not necessarily it's a primary motive, but it's not our only motive. We also have a motive of being socially responsible. So therefore, it eliminates the ability for other shareholders to sue the management or the primary shareholder of an organization for not just focusing on profitability. So let's talk a little bit about, and I know I'm running low on time, so let's talk a little bit about some of the value that comes out of partnering, which is really you know, a big primary component of what social enterprise is kind of getting that partnering between the for-profit and nonprofit sectors. So from the nonprofit sector generates new sources of income from the business ventures that it's creating. It becomes less dependent on donations and government funding, which is very, very important, because with government funding comes, you know, the audits, the rules and regulations that come into play. With donations, you've got to almost recreate yourself on an annual basis, but if you've got a business and that business is self-sustaining, that business will generate some level of profitability on an annual basis, and it's more predictable. Nonprofits can use the income to expand services. So if there are services that are no longer funded or never were funded by government sources, it's got more discretion to be able to fund or expand the services that are out there. It provides the nonprofit with greater community visibility, and it really has no impact on the overall social mission of the organization. If anything, it enhances the social mission of the organization. On the for-profit side, kind of working hand in hand and collaborating, again, it creates new sources of income for the organization. It could provide the organization with an employee recruitment advantage. If you've got two corporations or two for-profit organizations, all else the same, and one is more socially responsible and they do volunteering like we talked about before, they may have a better chance of attracting key employees to their organization, so they have an advantage. Positive brand recognition, again, we talked about a little bit about Occupy Wall Street and the Greed is Good concept. I mean, if an organization or company is giving money back and is socially partnering with the for-profit, nonprofit sector, it's going to make them look good. I mean, when you think about things like Newman's Own and you think about Ben & Jerry's, you have positive connotations of those, or Tom's of Maine. You know, there's positive connotations of those brand names. Greater community visibility, similar to the nonprofit sector, the for-profit sector also gets that greater community visibility, and there's really no trade-off on the existing business. So those are all positives. That's principally what I had to talk about. I included some slides in here in terms of who is SEA Long Island, if anybody is interested in learning more about us or getting involved with either SEA Long Island or one of the other SEA chapters across the country. They should seriously consider doing it. Here's our mission: to support and grow the development of nonprofit and for-profit enterprises that simultaneously pursue self-sustaining revenue and measurable social impact. We are the 13th chapter of the national organization, which is the Social Enterprise Alliance. And as I said before, we're a Long Island chapter, but there also is a New York City chapter. So if anybody would like to get involved, feel free. Here's who we are. I'm the scary one in the upper left-hand corner. And again, if you'd like to get involved, here's the address and phone number. My extension, for anybody who wants, is extension 203. So I know I only have about 5 minutes left. I'd kind of like to open things up for questions, if there are any questions.
Sure, Ken, thanks so much for all this useful information. If I could just keep you on the line for a few extra minutes to answer some questions that our attendees have. Would that be all right?
That's fine. I have as long as you want.
Great. I've provided you with the questions that have been coming into us in the chat box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Let's get started with asking one of the more general questions, or responding to one of the more general questions. How do small not-for-profits get started in creating business opportunities?
I think what organizations need to do is they need to look at where their strengths are. They need to understand what they're good at. They need to do some brainstorming within the organization, and that brainstorming should come from all levels. It's good if you've got a very entrepreneurial board of directors. That's always a positive, because they'll be able to provide support and insight. But you should also look to your programmatic people. You should look to your development people. You should look to management and the board. Sit down, throw some stuff against the wall, and see really what makes the most sense. Do your modeling, because businesses do require cash flow, and make sure that you have sufficient cash flow to do this. Again, kind of go out there and look at the marketplace. You can even look at some of the consumers and find out from your consumers if there's other things that you should be doing. Bruce, do you have anything else that you want to kind of throw in there?
Yeah, I think another thing that they could do is look at the organization that we belong to, the Social Enterprise Alliance, and if they're looking for ideas, that would be a good source. And the national organization has a website, and it serves as a good resource for nonprofits as well as for-profits that might be interested in looking at this.
There's a lot of potential models out there. There's a lot of organizations don't have to break new ground. So really, it comes down to, if you reach out to somebody, we might be able to, again, we should be able to provide some insight also.
Okay, thanks. And a sort of related question, if someone was thinking about starting a social enterprise, would it be better for them to structure it as a not-for-profit or for-profit company?
It really, really depends. It really comes down to what is the nature of the social enterprise that they're trying to create. If you're creating a social enterprise that's really unrelated to the mission of the organization, or really is a business venture, it might be very, very difficult for that organization to get nonprofit status for that business model. So they're pretty much going to have to create a for-profit business, and there's nothing wrong with having a for-profit business associated with a nonprofit organization. But it's going to come down to the nature of the business. So again, going back to some of the examples that we used before, you have IGHL, which utilizes some of the developmentally disabled individuals within the organization. Utilizing the developmentally disabled, that's part of their mission. Part of their mission is to, help them find jobs and to help promote the developmentally disabled population. So because that's part of their mission, they're able to do it as part of their nonprofit, or if they wanted, they could set up a separate nonprofit organization to handle that. But someone like an all-sector, FEGS, that set up an all-sector technology, which is utilizing IT people, it'd be very, very difficult for them to be able to say that that's part of their mission. So for them, the more viable alternative was to create a for-profit entity.
Okay, and a more specific question. Let me just find it in my list here. Can you talk about any ideas or resources that teach not-profit venture people to close a deal? For an example, not-for-profit community action agency staff that until now has not been involved in working with the for-profit sector. So a question about people who already have or are embarking on this venture but need a little bit of guidance.
I think what you need to do, and Bruce, you can chime in anytime you want, but I think what you need to do is I think you need to understand what the needs of your potential for-profit partners are, or what the needs of other for-profits in the community are, and find out how you as a nonprofit organization can help meet the needs of those organizations. As I mentioned before, you know, the computer software company that needs to do beta testing of their computer software. Well, you know they need to do beta testing. Do you have a large enough network to be able to effectively beta test some of their software? You know, you have, I'm trying to think of some other good examples. Again, the whole concept with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and Savers. You know, Big Brothers, Big Sisters saw an opportunity in the fact that, you know, they were getting people asking if they would take clothing, and they went out and they actually researched and found online a for-profit business that had a good distribution network. So again, it's looking at, you can look at it from two perspectives. One is, what are the opportunities that exist out there, and then do the research to find a way to find the partner to help you to meet that opportunity. Or you can find that partner first that maybe already has an affinity to the organization because they've donated to the organization in the past, and maybe sit down with the management of that organization and say, let's brainstorm, let's find out how we can kind of create a more effective model here rather than you just give us money. Let's find a way that, you know, we can kind of partner effectively so that there's mutual benefit, so that maybe it's not, you know, 5,000 or 10,000 coming to us as a donation each year, but it's 100,000 through a joint business venture that we're doing together. So go ahead, Bruce.
I would just add to that there are resources online that people could look up. Just look for social enterprise, and there's a lot of information out there. There are also consultants that focus on this space. I mean, the only downside is, you know, they typically charge money. But if you're an existing organization and want some help to ramp up, there are people out there that focus on this and that could add a lot of value to the process in terms of showing you how to go about structuring a business deal.
We've as the Social Enterprise Alliance of Long Island, we have actually worked with some nonprofit organizations, and we've looked at their operations, and we looked at how they could utilize their resources more effectively, and we gave them ideas on who they should be reaching out to try to partner with, and it's worked. You know, they've gone out and they've struck deals with for-profit businesses that were in line with some of the ideas that we threw out there for them.
Yeah, here on Long Island, we're going to try to ramp up that process by facilitating events that would bring for-profits and nonprofits together to create ideas and get the two communities to work together. I mean, that's here. We had shown the map of other organizations in different parts of the country. There you go. But again, I think you just have to start working on it. Certainly, we're available to answer questions. We might be able to refer people to other resources. But like most business ventures, you have to start somewhere, and that probably is research and beginning to talk with people.
And like I said, if you have for-profit businesses that you've got a good relationship with already, or maybe businesses of your board members, see if there's a way that you guys can brainstorm together and find ways that you can more effectively integrate.
In addition, we'll be sending out a follow-up email to this webinar, and the follow-up email will include a copy of the webinar recording for folks to re-watch and send around to their networks and colleagues, and we can include some of these requested resources in that follow-up to this webinar. But in the interest of time, I'm afraid we're going to have to sign off. I would just like to thank our presenters this morning for all of this good information. This has been a really valuable contribution to the LIFE dialogue and programming. And I'd like to let our web participants know that we'll send a follow-up email containing a link to the recording of the webinar, as I said, and that email will include this contact information to the Social Enterprise Alliance. LIFE will continue our monthly webinar series on Thursday, February 27th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, when representatives from the Empire Justice Center will be presenting their recent report titled "Don't Lean on Me: How New York's Public Assistance Mortgages Undermine Homeownership and Financial Stability." Announcements about future webinars will be communicated via the web and email. If you'd like to register for upcoming webinars, or if you'd like further information about the Low Income Forum on Energy, please visit our website at lifenynews.org, and please consider using our other online resources to join the mailing list or communicate your needs to us. I'd like to say thank you again to Ken Serini and Bruce Newman of the Social Enterprise Alliance Long Island Chapter for their presentation. And thanks to all the webinar attendees for participating in the LIFE Monthly Webinar Series. Have a great morning.